Welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm a teacher and author, and this is English Nerd. I'm going back to the Picture of Dorian Gray today with chapter 3. This is going to be a shorter video just because there's a little less meat on the bone here. However, there are some important developments to the plot and the characters that I do want to share with you. So just like with the other All About Dorian Gray videos, I'm going to summarize the action and then make some analytical observations as well along the way. So hopefully this either enhances or clarifies your own study of Dorian Gray or your enjoyment of Dorian Gray if you're reading along with me. So I would definitely recommend that you see the previous videos before watching this one because they really lay the groundwork for what's going on in chapter 3. So chapter 3 opens and we have Lord Henry. This is really his chapter. This is his deciding to make Dorian his project. I think in chapter 2, when Lord Henry is trying to influence Dorian, is leading him through those steps of temptation that I talked about, he was just kind of experimenting, but here he decides, no, I'm gonna make Dorian my project. He even thinks it very clearly to himself in this chapter. So it's the day after he's met Dorian Gray, and he's going to do some investigation into who Dorian is. So he goes to his uncle, Lord George Fermor, and asks if he knows anything about Dorian. So this chapter has some of the typical Oscar Wilde class satire in it. Some of it's more relevant to the plot than other pieces of it, so I'm not going to go through all of those satirical comments and, you know, the witty banter and all of that. I'm going to focus more so on what is most important to the matter at hand, and that is Dorian. So clearly, Lord Henry has already done some research into who Dorian Gray is. The day before, he didn't know that Dorian existed, and now he's saying, all right, I know certain things. About a page or so into the chapter, Lord Henry is explaining to his uncle that Dorian is the last Lord Kelso's grandson. His mother was a Devereux, Lady Margaret Devereux. I want you to tell me about his mother. What was she like? Whom did she marry? So Lord Henry has these crumbs. He knows that Dorian grew up with his grandfather, Lord Kelso, and he knows the name of the mother as well, but he's hoping that the uncle, who was a contemporary of that kind of generation, the previous generations, would have more insight into Dorian's background, his family. So right away, Lord Henry is not only seeking to influence Dorian, but there's almost a slightly stalkerish vibe that's going to ramp up as the story continues, interestingly. So Uncle Fermor does know the backstory of Margaret Devereux, and it's a rather sad story. So Margaret was a woman of extraordinary beauty herself, which she passed on to her son Dorian, but unbeknownst to her, because Margaret, although she was desired by all of the eligible men, decided to run off with a penniless person of no fortune and stature, and this was of course a scandal. Everyone was shocked. Why would she choose this man when there were all these other people that she could have chosen? And because of this choice to marry this person of no name and no money, Lord Kelso, at least so the rumor goes, paid to have Dorian's father, that penniless man, killed in this fight. There was a brawl, and most people suspected that Lord Kelso was behind it, that it was a paid hit. Soon thereafter, Dorian's mother, Margaret, also passed away, and Dorian, an orphan, grew up in Lord Kelso's house, his grandfather. So it's this very dramatic, intense backstory that Dorian has about this beautiful, beautiful mother, penniless father, evil and conniving grandfather, and it's into that environment that Dorian grows up. Dorian himself is noble, but only on the one side. He has inherited some property from his grandfather, including a place called Selby. So yeah, they talk for a while, and Lord Henry just becomes more and more fascinated and nearly obsessed, not in the way that Basil is obsessed with Dorian as a muse for his art. Instead, I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit here, and there's a part that really shows Lord Henry's hand, what he wants and how he views Dorian, and it says, "Yes, he would try to be to Dorian Gray what, without knowing it, the lad was to the painter who had fashioned the wonderful portrait. He would seek to dominate him, had already indeed half done so. He would make that wonderful spirit his own. There was something fascinating in this son of love and death." What a comment. He would seek to dominate him. So Lord Henry is pretty self-aware of the influence that he's having on Dorian, and he wants to just turn that into this chokehold. He wants to dominate, control, influence Dorian in a very intentional way. It reminds me of Iago, the villain in Shakespeare's Othello, and how he is self-aware that he is the villain. He even tries to convince the audience that he's maybe not the villain, but it's fascinating. If you're interested, by the way, in some of these additional works that I keep referencing, Paradise Lost, Othello, the relevant passages are on my website in the Picture of Dorian Gray reader. It comes with the entire story of the Picture of Dorian Gray, as well as some paired readings too. So if that sounds interesting to you, head on over to my website. Okay, so once Lord Henry leaves his uncle's house, he goes to Aunt Agatha's. Aunt Agatha is from his other side of the family, evidently because Aunt Agatha and Uncle Fermer do not appear to be together with each other, so it's a different aunt. Aunt Agatha is the person who introduced Dorian to Basil at a party. So all of this is very closed, London high society. Everybody knows everybody, everybody's gossiping about everybody. And so it's to Aunt Agatha's that Henry goes for to dine for dinner. Dorian's going to be there, as well as a kind of cast of these high society characters, most of whom are not actually that important, so I'm not going to bother giving you their names and descriptions. The key thing here is that Lord Henry, at this party, basically puts on a show. And the show, although it's dazzling everybody, where he speaks very much like he spoke in the garden with Dorian at the beginning, is full of paradoxes, is full of these, just these sparkly, contradictory, incendiary, bantering statements and, descriptions of life and all of this. So everyone's just fascinated by his facility with words. A word that I do want to define here for you, if you have not already had this defined, is paradox. A paradox is two contradictory ideas that reveal a deeper truth. So they're simultaneously true, but they appear to be contradictory. This is kind of the bread and butter of a lot of what Lord Henry says. He just throws out these paradoxes. What I want to kind of land on here is that Lord Henry is giving this, he's the life of the party, and he's watching Dorian's reaction. Dorian really doesn't say much at all in this whole chapter, but he's putting on a show just to lure in Dorian even further. We're going to see these time jumps in the next chapter, for example, where we see that his desire to fully influence and dominate Dorian has essentially come to pass. He is very good at what he does. He is just, like I said, sparkling, alluring in his words. So in the middle of all of this, acrobatic eloquence, there is an exchange that goes back to some of the themes of previous chapters, and that is when the Duchess, there's a Duchess there, says, when an old woman like myself blushes, it's a very bad sign. Ah, Lord Henry, I wish you would tell me how to become young again. This is underscoring the case that Lord Henry made for youth in the previous chapter. So Lord Henry seizes on this opportunity and he answers, to get back one's youth, one has merely to repeat one's follies. And people recognize that this is a dangerous theory, but they're all still intrigued. They all still almost want to believe Lord Henry, because who doesn't want permission to do the wrong thing, right? So just like Lord Henry said to Dorian in the previous chapter, just give in to temptation, basically. Here he is saying something similar, but in a different way. To get back one's youth, to become more youthful, then commit those same follies, those same errors. And here is impressionable Dorian listening to all of this and taking it in. Okay, I'm just going to leave you with these final thoughts here. As everybody is leaving the dinner party, many people are saying to Lord Henry variations of, Lord Henry, you are quite delightful and dreadfully demoralizing. Someone else says, I consider you extremely dangerous, and if anything happens to our good Duchess, we shall all look on you as being primarily responsible. But I should like to talk to you about life. So everybody they're drawn to Lord Henry, even as they recognize that his words are poisonous. And once just about everybody leaves, Dorian comes up to Henry and says, I know I said I was going to spend time with Basil, but I feel like I must come with you instead. So it's an even stronger repetition, basically, of the end of chapter 2, where there are those two paths, the kind of angel superego path and the devil id path. Give in to your appetites, that kind of thing. And that is Dorian's choice at the end of this chapter as well. Now that Lord Henry has done some research on Dorian, has, allured him in a more public setting, impressed him. So he's getting his hooks deep into this young man who has already made a dreadful decision in the previous chapter that will come to affect him terribly in the days to come. All right, I hope you're enjoying this series all about Dorian Gray. If you are, again, head over to my website, carly-stevens.com. Not only will you find the Dorian Reader with those paired readings, but you'll also find an entire teaching unit with quizzes, with vocabulary, with all the things that you need in order to have a Picture of Dorian Gray unit to go with these videos or those paired readings. If you're enjoying this channel in general and all the hundreds of other educational videos I provide, do consider leaving me a tip with the super thanks down below. I'd appreciate that very much. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video, and I'll see you next time.